We had it all, or so I thought. A picture-perfect life, the kind you see in commercials for life insurance or family sedans. Kendall, my wife of 10 glorious years, was everything a man could ask for: beautiful, intelligent, a wonderful mother to our 2 cherubic children, Liam and Lily. Our colonial-style home, nestled in a quiet, leafy suburb, was a testament to our hard work and shared dreams. I poured long hours into my job as a software engineer, but it was all worth it, knowing I was providing for my family, building a future filled with laughter, love, and security. Weekends were sacred, dedicated to family time, picnics in the park, building sandcastles at the beach, movie nights huddled on the sofa with bowls of popcorn. We were a team, Kendall and I, 2 halves of a perfect whole. I trusted her implicitly, never questioning her loyalty or love. It never crossed my mind that such a thing could happen to us, to our idyllic little world. We were unshakable, unbreakable. The first cracks appeared subtly, like hairline fractures in a seemingly flawless piece of porcelain. It started with the yoga classes. Twice a week, Kendall would leave the house, clad in her Lululemon attire, a yoga mat tucked under her arm. Initially, I encouraged it. A little me time was healthy, a way to distress from the pressures of motherhood. But the yoga classes started stretching later and later into the evening. The hushed phone calls, taken in the other room, became more frequent. A new perfume, musky and intoxicating, began clinging to her clothes, a scent that wasn't mine. I pushed these nagging doubts aside, burying them beneath layers of denial. I loved Kendall, trusted her with my life, and love, as I understood it then, meant blinding yourself to the uncomfortable truths. It meant giving the benefit of the doubt, even when the doubt was gnawing at your insides like a hungry rat. One Tuesday evening, Kendall returned from her yoga class, later than usual. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes brighter than normal, a nervous energy radiating from her like heat from a furnace. She was almost giddy, humming a tuneless melody as she walked into the living room. I was on the couch, catching up on emails, the television playing softly in the background. It was tuned to the security camera feed from our bedroom, a precaution I'd installed after a string of burglaries in the neighborhood. I usually kept the volume muted, just glancing at the screen occasionally to ensure everything was secure. As Kendall entered the room, her eyes fell on the television screen. The color drained from her face, replaced by a stark, ashen pallor. Her breath hitched in her throat, a strangled gasp escaping her lips. Her hand flew to her mouth, as if to stifle a scream. On the screen, frozen in grainy black and white, was a scene that shattered my world into a million pieces. It was our bedroom, our bed, but the figures intertwined beneath the sheets were not Kendall and me. It was Kendall, her hair splayed across the pillow, her face contorted in a mixture of ecstasy and something else, something that looked a lot like guilt. And next to her, a man, his face obscured by the shadows, but his body, his movements, unmistakably male. The image was seared into my brain, a branding iron burning a mark of betrayal deep into my soul. The silence that filled the room was deafening, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Time seemed to slow to a crawl, each tick an agonizing reminder of the life that had just been stolen from me. The perfect life, the life I thought we had built together, brick by brick, year after year. It was all a lie, a carefully constructed illusion, shattered in a single, devastating moment. The remote control slipped from my numb fingers, clattering against the coffee table. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen, replaying the scene over and over in my mind, as if by doing so, I could somehow make sense of it, rewind time, and erase the image from existence. Kendall stood frozen, her eyes wide with terror, her body trembling. The cheerful facade had crumbled, revealing the raw, exposed nerves beneath. She looked like a trapped animal, caught in the headlights of an oncoming car. I wanted to scream, to rage, to lash out, but the shock was so profound, so all-consuming, that I couldn't even speak. My throat constricted, my chest tightened, and a cold, hollow ache settled in the pit of my stomach. The world, once vibrant and full of promise, now seemed bleak and desolate. The colors had faded, replaced by a monochrome palette of gray. The air was thick with the suffocating scent of betrayal, clinging to me like a shroud. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison, every room a constant reminder of the life I had lost. The photographs on the mantelpiece, capturing our smiling faces, now mock me with their false promises of happiness. The children's drawings, plastered on the refrigerator door, seemed like cruel reminders of the innocence that had been tainted, the future that had been irrevocably altered. In that moment, I felt like a stranger in my own home, a ghost haunting the remnants of a life that no longer existed. The man I was, the man who believed in love and trust and happily ever afters, had died, replaced by something colder, something harder, something fueled by a burning desire for revenge. The shock, the initial gut-wrenching paralysis, gradually gave way to a cold, calculating rage. It was a slow burn, starting as a flicker of anger deep in my core and steadily growing into an inferno that consumed every other emotion. The betrayal was so profound, so utterly devastating, that I felt a fundamental shift within me. The man I had been, the trusting, loving husband and father, was gone, replaced by a stranger driven by a single, all-consuming purpose: revenge. My first instinct was to confront her, to unleash the torrent of fury building inside me. But I held back. Raw, uncontrolled anger would be messy, unsatisfying. I wanted something more, something calculated, something that would cut her to the core, just as she had cut me. I wanted her to feel the same pain, the same gut-wrenching betrayal that I was experiencing. I wanted her to pay. So I began to plan, meticulously, like a general strategizing for war. My weapon of choice: information. Knowledge is power, and I intended to arm myself to the teeth. My first move was to expand my surveillance network. The single camera in the bedroom was no longer sufficient. I needed a complete picture, a comprehensive record of her deceit. I installed cameras in the living room, the kitchen, even the garage. Every corner of our once sacred home became a stage for her performance, her every lie documented in high definition. The footage became my obsession, a morbid fascination I couldn't resist. Watching her go about her daily routine, pretending to be the loving wife and mother, while secretly plotting her next rendezvous with her lover, fueled my rage. Every stolen kiss, every whispered endearment, every lie she told me and our children, was a fresh wound, a constant reminder of the life she had so callously destroyed. Parallel to my surveillance operation, I began to secure my financial future. I quietly transferred funds from our joint accounts into a separate account I had opened under my name. It was a slow, deliberate process, designed to avoid raising any suspicion. I also began liquidating some of our shared assets, converting them into easily transferable funds. I knew that when the time came, I would need to be financially independent, free from any ties that bound me to her. My next step was to identify the other man. The grainy security footage offered only a fleeting glimpse of his face, not enough to positively identify him. So I hired a private investigator, a seasoned professional with a reputation for discretion and efficiency. I provided him with everything I had: the security footage, the times and dates of Kendall's yoga classes, any details I could remember about the man's appearance. The investigator's report, delivered a few weeks later, was more damning than I could have imagined. The man, whose name was Finn, was not some random stranger. He was a respected member of our community, a married man with 2 children of his own, a successful lawyer with a pristine reputation. The irony was almost unbearable. The man who was destroying my family was a pillar of the community, a man who projected an image of integrity and moral rectitude. It made my stomach churn. I learned everything about him: his address, his workplace, his daily routine, even the names of his children. I studied his social media profiles, poring over pictures of his seemingly perfect family, his smiling wife, his innocent children. The hypocrisy was staggering. He was living a double life, preaching family values while betraying his own family, just as he was betraying mine. I delved deeper, uncovering details about his past, his education, his professional accomplishments. I learned about his charitable work, his involvement in community organizations, his reputation as a devoted husband and father. The more I learned, the more my rage intensified. He was a master of deception, a wolf in sheep's clothing, preying on vulnerable women while maintaining a carefully constructed facade of respectability. The information I gathered became my ammunition, my arsenal for the war one was waging against them both. I knew that I couldn't simply confront them with my anger. I needed a plan, a strategy that would expose their lies and inflict the maximum amount of pain. I wanted to dismantle their carefully crafted illusions, to reveal their true natures to the world. I wanted to destroy them, just as they had destroyed me. My plan began to take shape, slowly, methodically, like a spider weaving its web. I chose a date, a significant date, our 10th wedding anniversary. It would be a grand spectacle, a public unveiling of the deceit. I would invite both families, our friends, our colleagues, everyone who had been complicit in their charade. They would all bear witness to the truth, to the devastating consequences of their lies. I booked a table at the most expensive restaurant in town, a place frequented by the city's elite, a place where appearances mattered more than anything else. It was the perfect setting for my grand finale, the culmination of my carefully orchestrated plan. I imagined their faces, Kendall and Finn, as the truth was revealed, their carefully constructed facades crumbling around them like a house of cards. I spent weeks preparing, rehearsing every detail in my mind. I envisioned the scene, the shocked gasps, the whispers of disbelief, the looks of disgust directed at them. I anticipated the denials, their attempts to justify their actions, their pleas for forgiveness. But I would remain resolute, unyielding in my pursuit of justice. The anticipation was almost unbearable, a mixture of excitement and dread. I knew that what I was about to do would change our lives forever. There would be no going back, no reconciliation, no forgiveness. The damage had been done, the trust irrevocably broken. But I was ready. I had spent weeks, months, living with the poison of the betrayal coursing through my veins. Now, it was time for them to taste the same bitter brew. It was time for them to pay. The day arrived, heavy with anticipation. A knot of nervous energy tightened in my stomach as I dressed in my best suit, the same one I had worn on our wedding day. It felt like a lifetime ago. The irony wasn't lost on me, celebrating a decade of lies, a decade of betrayal disguised as love. I looked at myself in the mirror, barely recognizing the hardened, cold man staring back. The pain had carved deep lines into my face, etching the story of my betrayal onto my very being. Kendall, oblivious to the impending storm, was radiant in a crimson dress, the color of blood, I noted grimly. She fussed over the children, her laughter echoing through the house, a chilling reminder of her duplicity. I watched her, a detached observer, marveling at her ability to maintain the charade. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. The restaurant was buzzing with conversation, the clinking of silverware against china, the low hum of polite laughter. Our families were already seated, a tableau of forced smiles and strained pleasantries. Finn's family was there too, his wife, oblivious, radiating an almost painful innocence. My heart twisted with a pang of guilt for her, another victim in this elaborate web of deceit. My own family, aware of the situation, offered me silent support, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and steely resolve. The evening unfolded with agonizing slowness. Each toast, each congratulatory remark, felt like a dagger twisting in my gut. Kendall, basking in the attention, played her part perfectly, the devoted wife, the loving mother, the picture of domestic bliss. Finn, seated across from me, maintained a carefully neutral expression, occasionally glancing at Kendall, his eyes filled with a mixture of lust and nervousness. I watched them, my face a mask of calm indifference, a volcano simmering beneath the surface. Dinner was served, a symphony of flavors I couldn't taste. My appetite had vanished, replaced by a gnawing anticipation. The moment was approaching, the culmination of my meticulous planning, the moment of truth. I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching the scene unfold from a distance, a spectator in my own life. The champagne flowed, fueling the forced gaiety. Finally, the moment arrived. Kendall's father rose to his feet, his glass raised high. To Kendall and Michael, he boomed, his voice filled with false cheer, 10 wonderful years, and many more to come. A chorus of agreement echoed around the table. Glasses clinked, smiles were plastered on faces, the charade continued. This was my cue. "If you'll excuse me for a moment," I said, my voice calm and steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. I rose from my seat, my heart pounding against my ribs. This was it. There was no turning back. I walked towards the restroom, my steps measured, deliberate. As I passed the manager's station, I discreetly slipped him a generous tip, a silent acknowledgement of our prior arrangement. He gave me a curt nod, his eyes betraying a flicker of understanding. Inside the restroom, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I pulled the small remote control from my pocket, the cool metal a reassuring weight in my hand. This small device held the power to detonate the bomb I had so carefully constructed. It was the key to their downfall, the instrument of my revenge. Returning to the dining room, I paused at the entrance, surveying the scene. Everyone was still seated, the glasses raised, waiting for me to rejoin the toast. Kendall, her face flushed with wine and happiness, beamed at me. It was a look of pure, unadulterated joy, a look that made my blood run cold. I walked towards the table, my gaze fixed on the large screen TV mounted on the wall, usually displaying generic restaurant scenes or sporting events. Tonight, it was displaying a slideshow of our wedding photos, a curated collection of happy memories, a testament to the life we had pretended to have. Clearing my throat, I captured the attention of the room. All eyes turned towards me, expectant, waiting for me to rejoin the celebration. I raised my hand, the remote control clutched tightly in my fist. "Before we continue this celebration," I said, my voice echoing through the suddenly silent room, "I think there's something you all should see." With a press of a button, the slideshow vanished, replaced by the grainy black and white footage from our bedroom security camera. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the gasps of horror and disbelief that rippled through the room. Kendall's face, a moment ago radiant with happiness, now contorted in a mask of shock and terror. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, darted around the room, searching for an escape, a way out of the nightmare that was unfolding before her. Finn, his face ashen, stared at the screen, his body frozen in place. The carefully constructed facade of respectability had crumbled, revealing the raw, exposed nerves beneath. His wife, seated next to him, let out a strangled cry, her hand flying to her mouth, as if to stifle a scream. Her eyes, filled with a mixture of pain and confusion, darted between her husband and the screen, trying to reconcile the man she thought she knew with the image of him betraying her trust. The room erupted in chaos. Voices rose in a cacophony of shock, anger, and disbelief. Kendall's family, their faces contorted in a mixture of horror and shame, stared at her with a mixture of disgust and pity. My own family, though stunned, remained stoic, their eyes filled with a quiet understanding. I watched the scene unfold, a strange sense of calm washing over me. The plan had worked. The truth was out. Their lies had been exposed, their carefully constructed illusions shattered into a million pieces. I stood there, a silent observer, as the room descended into pandemonium. Kendall, her face buried in her hands, sobbed uncontrollably. Finn, his face pale and drawn, avoided the gaze of his wife, his shame palpable. I didn't gloat, didn't offer any explanations or justifications. There was nothing left to say. The images spoke for themselves, a damning indictment of their betrayal. Turning on my heel, I walked out of the restaurant, leaving them to face the music, the wreckage of their lies strewn around them like confetti. The knot in my stomach had loosened, replaced by a hollow emptiness. It wasn't the triumphant feeling I had expected. It was simply the end of a chapter, the closing of a door on a life that no longer existed. The revenge had been served, cold and calculated, just as I had intended. But the victory felt hollow, a Pyrrhic victory won at the cost of everything I had once held dear. As I stepped out into the night, the cool air a welcome relief against my skin, I felt a sense of finality. It was over. The charade was over. The lies, the deceit, the betrayal, it was all out in the open. There was nothing left to hide. And as I walked away, I knew that I would never look back. The following morning, the world felt strangely quiet. The buzzing in my ears, the constant thrum of anxiety that had been my companion for months, had vanished, replaced by a hollow silence. I felt strangely detached, as if I were watching my life unfold from a distance. The events of the previous night felt like a dream, a surreal, fevered hallucination. But the lingering scent of betrayal, clinging to the air like stale perfume, was a stark reminder of the reality of my situation. My first act of the day, after ensuring the children were settled with my parents, was to confront Finn. I drove to his office, a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of the city, a symbol of his success, his carefully constructed image of respectability. The receptionist, a young woman with a perfectly manicured smile, greeted me with practiced politeness. I didn't bother with pleasantries. I stated my name and my purpose, my voice cold and hard. I had no intention of playing nice. The look on her face as recognition dawned was priceless. The carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the flicker of fear in her eyes. She stammered, her professional composure cracking under the weight of the situation. I repeated my request, my voice laced with steel. She reluctantly buzzed me through, her eyes following me with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. I found him in his office, a spacious corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. He was seated behind his large mahogany desk, his head buried in his hands, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The picture of a broken man. He looked up as I entered, his eyes widening in alarm. The blood drained from his face, leaving him looking pale and haggard. The confident, assured lawyer I had seen in the restaurant the previous night was gone, replaced by a cowering, frightened shell of a man. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I closed the door behind me, the click echoing through the room like the sound of a gun being cocked. The silence that followed was thick with tension, charged with unspoken accusations. I stood there, my arms crossed, my gaze fixed on him, letting the silence hang in the air, letting him stew in his own guilt and shame. "I believe you know why I'm here," I finally said, my voice low and menacing. He didn't answer, his eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. There was none. My words were precise, calculated, designed to inflict maximum damage. I didn't raise my voice, didn't resort to physical violence. My weapon of choice was the truth, the cold, hard facts of his betrayal. I laid it all out, chapter and verse, detailing every secret encounter, every lie, every stolen moment. I described the surveillance, the cameras, the meticulous documentation of their affair. I revealed the information I had gathered about his life, his family, his carefully constructed facade of respectability. He listened in silence, his face a mask of shame and humiliation. He didn't deny, didn't try to justify his actions. He simply sat there, absorbing the blows, his body shrinking under the weight of my words. The verbal lashing continued, a relentless barrage of accusations, designed to strip him bare, to expose him for the liar and cheat he was. I spoke of the pain he had inflicted on my family, the damage he had caused, the trust he had so callously betrayed. I spoke of the consequences of his actions, the ripple effect of his lies, the devastation he had wrought. As I spoke, the door to his office opened, revealing a small group of people, his colleagues, his superiors, drawn by the commotion. They stood there, silent witnesses to his downfall, their faces a mixture of shock and disgust. The shame was palpable, thick in the air, suffocating him. His carefully constructed world was crumbling around him, his reputation in tatters. I didn't flinch, didn't break my stride. I continued my tirade, my voice rising in intensity, fueled by the presence of his audience. I wanted them to see him for who he truly was, a hypocrite, a liar, a betrayer of trust. I wanted them to witness his downfall, to see the consequences of his actions. When I was finished, I turned to his colleagues, my gaze sweeping over their faces. "This," I said, my voice dripping with contempt, "is the man you respect, the man you trust. This is the man who hides behind a mask of respectability while preying on vulnerable women. This is the man who destroys families without a second thought." I turned and walked out of the office, leaving him to face the music, the wreckage of his reputation strewn around him like broken glass. I didn't look back. The next step was informing his wife. This was the hardest part, the part one had dreaded the most. She was an innocent victim in all of this, caught in the crossfire of our war. But she deserved to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I contacted her, arranging a meeting at a quiet cafe away from prying eyes. She arrived, her face etched with worry, her eyes filled with a mixture of apprehension and hope. I could see the love she had for her husband in her eyes, the blind faith she had in him. It broke my heart to shatter that illusion, to tear down the world she had built around him. I told her everything, sparing no detail. I showed her the evidence, the photographs, the messages, the irrefutable proof of his infidelity. I watched as the color drained from her face, as the realization of his betrayal sunk in. She didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't lash out. She simply sat there, her body trembling, her eyes fixed on the table, as if trying to absorb the enormity of the revelation. I offered her my support, my condolences, but there were no words that could adequately express the pain she was feeling. I had delivered the final blow, the coup de grace that would end their marriage, their life together. I had become the instrument of her destruction, just as I had been the instrument of his. The divorce proceedings were swift and merciless. Kendall, stripped bare of her lies and deceit, had no defense. I retained full custody of the children, my priority their well-being and protection. She was left with nothing but the wreckage of her lies, the shattered remnants of the life she had so carelessly destroyed. The legal battles were exhausting, draining, but I remained resolute. I fought for my children, for their future, for the chance to build a new life, free from the shadow of her betrayal. I didn't seek revenge in the divorce, didn't try to punish her financially. My only concern was the children, their safety, their happiness. In the end, it was a clean break. She disappeared from our lives, fading into the background, a ghost of the woman I had once loved. I didn't celebrate my victory, didn't revel in her downfall. There was no satisfaction, no sense of closure. There was only the hollow ache of loss, the lingering pain of betrayal. The fallout extended beyond our immediate families. The news of Kendall's affair and Finn's subsequent downfall spread like wildfire through our small community. They became pariahs, ostracized by their friends and neighbors, their reputations in tatters. Kendall, once the envy of many, became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the consequences of infidelity. Finn, stripped of his professional standing and his social status, became a recluse, a shadow of his former self. His wife, heartbroken and betrayed, filed for divorce, taking their children and leaving him to face the consequences of his actions alone. The ripples of the betrayal spread far and wide, touching the lives of countless people, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The community, once a haven of peace and tranquility, became a battleground of whispers and rumors, a breeding ground for suspicion and distrust. The impact on our children was profound. They were too young to fully understand the complexities of the situation, but they sensed the shift in the atmosphere, the tension that hung heavy in the air. They witnessed their mother's absence, their father's pain, the unraveling of their family. It was a burden they shouldn't have had to bear, a scar that would likely remain with them for the rest of their lives. I tried my best to shield them from the fallout, to create a sense of normalcy in the midst of the chaos. I focused on their well-being, their education, their emotional needs. I became both mother and father, providing them with the love and support they needed to navigate the turbulent waters of their new reality. It wasn't easy. There were sleepless nights, filled with worry and self-doubt. There were moments of despair, when the weight of it all threatened to crush me. But I persevered, driven by my love for my children, my determination to provide them with a stable and loving home. Years drifted by, blurring the sharp edges of the past. The raw, visceral pain gradually subsided, replaced by a dull ache, a phantom limb sensation where my trust in Kendall had once resided. The world, once painted in shades of gray, slowly regained its color, the vibrancy returning in small increments, like the hesitant bloom of spring after a harsh winter. I poured myself into work, finding solace in the logic and structure of code. The long hours provided a welcome distraction, a refuge from the memories that still haunted me. My career flourished, my skills honed by the fire of my experience. I climbed the corporate ladder, achieving a level of success I had only dreamed of before. It wasn't a replacement for the family I had lost, but it was something, a tangible measure of my resilience, my ability to rebuild my life from the ashes of betrayal. My children became my anchor, my reason for being. I watched them grow, their personalities blossoming, their laughter filling the void that Kendall had left behind. I dedicated myself to their well-being, their education, their happiness. I became their protector, their confidant, their champion. They were my redemption, the living embodiment of the love that had survived the wreckage of my marriage. We forged a new family unit, a bond strengthened by shared experience, by the unspoken understanding of what we had lost and what we had gained. Weekends were no longer filled with the manufactured perfection of family outings designed for social media consumption. They became genuine, spontaneous moments of connection, building forts in the living room, baking cookies together, sharing stories and laughter around the dinner table. We created our own traditions, our own rituals, a tapestry of shared experiences that defined our new normal. The house, once a constant reminder of my betrayal, gradually transformed into a home again, a sanctuary filled with the warmth of love and the comforting rhythm of family life. The silence Kendall left behind was initially deafening, a constant reminder of her absence. But over time, I learned to appreciate the quiet, the stillness that allowed me to hear my own thoughts, to reconnect with myself, the man I had been before the betrayal, and the man I was becoming. I rediscovered old hobbies, passions I had neglected during my marriage. I started hiking again, exploring the trails in the nearby mountains, finding solace in the solitude of nature. I joined a book club, rediscovering the joy of literature, the power of stories to transport us to other worlds, to offer solace and understanding in the face of adversity. I began to rebuild my life, brick by brick, creating a foundation of self-reliance, self-respect, and self-love. I learned to forgive myself. For the years of denial, for the blind trust that had led to my downfall, for the anger and bitterness that had consumed me in the aftermath. Forgiveness wasn't about condoning Kendall's actions, but about releasing myself from the shackles of the past, freeing myself to move forward, to embrace the possibility of happiness again. It was a slow, arduous process, but it was necessary, essential for my healing, for my ability to find peace. Peace. It was a word that had seemed unattainable in the immediate aftermath of the betrayal, a distant shore I could never reach. But gradually, over time, I found it. Not the placid, undisturbed calm of ignorance, but a hard-won tranquility, forged in the fires of adversity. It was a peace that came from acceptance, from understanding that life is messy, unpredictable, and often unfair. It was a peace that came from letting go of the need to control, the need to understand, the need to be right. I found love again, not the whirlwind romance of my youth, but a quiet, steady affection, built on mutual respect, shared values, and a deep appreciation for the simple joys of life. It wasn't a replacement for the love I had shared with Kendall, but a different kind of love, a more mature, more resilient love, grounded in reality, not illusion. It was a love that allowed me to be vulnerable again, to trust again, to open my heart to the possibility of happiness again. Kendall remained a distant figure, a ghost haunting the periphery of my life. I heard whispers of her struggles, her attempts to rebuild her life, her ostracization from the community. I didn't gloat, didn't revel in her misfortune. I felt a pang of sadness, a flicker of empathy for the woman she had become, the woman she could have been. But I didn't reach out, didn't offer forgiveness. Some wounds are too deep to heal, some betrayals too profound to forget. I never forgot what she had done, the pain she had inflicted, the life she had destroyed. But I no longer allowed it to define me. The memory of her betrayal no longer held the power to wound me, to control my emotions, to dictate my future. It had become a part of my story, a chapter I had closed, a lesson learned. The children, now teenagers, occasionally asked about their mother. I answered their questions honestly, age-appropriately, without judgment or bitterness. I didn't paint her as a villain, nor did I try to excuse her actions. I simply presented the facts, allowing them to form their own opinions, to draw their own conclusions. It was their story too, a part of their history, a piece of their identity. Looking back, I saw the man I had been before the betrayal, the naive, trusting husband, blinded by love and the illusion of perfection. And I saw the man I had become, the resilient, self-reliant father, forged in the fires of adversity. The journey had been long and arduous, a painful odyssey of self-discovery and transformation. But I had emerged from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and more at peace than I had ever been before. I didn't regret the experience, didn't wish it hadn't happened. It had been a crucible, a test of my character, my resilience, my capacity for love and forgiveness. It had stripped me bare, revealing my vulnerabilities, my weaknesses, my deepest fears. But it had also revealed my strengths, my courage, my unwavering determination to protect my children, to rebuild my life, to find happiness again. The story of my betrayal wasn't a tragedy, but a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the power of love to heal, the capacity for forgiveness to liberate. It was a story of loss and pain, but also a story of hope and redemption. It was a story of how one man, faced with the ultimate betrayal, chose to rise above the ashes, to rebuild his life, to find peace, and to create a new beginning for himself and his children. It was a story of how, in the face of darkness, I found the light.